The disappearance of Anne-Elisabeth Hagen, Norway's enduring mystery. Anne-Elisabeth Hagen was known as Lisbeth to those closest to her. Born in 1950, she grew up in Norway and met her future husband, Tom Hagen, when they were both very young. Friends and family described her as a warm, happy person who was liked by everyone she met. Where Tom was quiet and media-shy, Anne-Elisabeth was the more outgoing half of the couple, the one who helped them fit in socially wherever they went. The couple married in October 1969, when both were just 19 years old. Tom would later describe their union as fate, referencing something personal they experienced together in their teens that bound them together. They built a life centered on family, having 3 children together during the 1980s. As Tom's business ventures grew increasingly successful, Anne-Elisabeth remained involved, serving as a board member of his holding company. By 2018, the Hagens had been married for nearly 50 years. They lived in a large home in Fjellhamar, a village in Lørenskog municipality, approximately 12 miles outside Oslo. Despite Tom's immense wealth, estimated at 1.7 billion Norwegian kroner, or roughly $200 million, the couple maintained what Norwegian broadcaster NRK described as a anonymous lifestyle. They valued their privacy, rarely giving interviews or appearing in public. Anne-Elisabeth was 68 years old in the autumn of 2018. She was described as fit for her age. She was a grandmother, devoted to her 3 adult children and their families. By all accounts from those who knew the couple, she and Tom had what he called a good marriage. Though like any long union, it had experienced its ups and downs over the decades. Tom Hagen's success story was remarkable. The second oldest of 12 children in a farming family from Gran in Hadeland, he had grown up with modest means on the family farm in Jæren. His upbringing emphasized self-reliance and hard work, values that would serve him well in business. In 1978, Tom launched his career in real estate development. He built a substantial portfolio that included developments in Lørenskog, Oslo, Fet, Lillehammer, and Ringebu. He also acquired a significant stake in a prominent Norwegian ski resort, including involvement in developing the Kvitfjell ski center that hosted the Ms. Alpine competition at the 1994 Winter Olympics. In 1992, Tom co-founded Elkraft AS, an electricity distribution company. He came to own 70% of its shares. By 2018, Norway's financial magazine Capital ranked him as the country's 172nd richest person. Despite this wealth, the Hagens lived quietly. Tom was known for being extremely private, consistently avoiding interviews and public appearances. He was also notably outdated with technology, a detail that would later become relevant to the investigation. Anne-Elisabeth handled much of the social aspects of their life, making up for Tom's reticent nature. In 1993, the couple signed a marriage contract. According to its terms, in the event of divorce, Anne-Elisabeth would receive the furniture, a car, and land she had inherited from her parents. This prenuptial agreement would later become a subject of intense scrutiny. On the evening of October 30, 2018, Anne-Elisabeth and Tom went to the theater with friends. It was an ordinary outing for the couple, nothing that suggested what was about to unfold. They returned home to their residence on Slorveien in Fjellhamar that night. The morning of October 31st, Halloween, began routinely. Tom left for work at 9 o'clock in the morning. The drive to his office at the Futurum Business Park took between 10 and 15 minutes, depending on traffic. He arrived at his workplace around 9:14 or 9:15 a.m., captured on security cameras at the gates of his energy and property investment company. Anne-Elisabeth stayed home with the couple's new puppy. At 9:14 a.m. that morning, around the time Tom was arriving at work, Anne-Elisabeth made a phone call to a family member. The conversation lasted only a couple of minutes. This would be the last confirmed contact anyone had with her. At approximately 9:48 a.m., an electrician named Tommy Skansen called Anne-Elisabeth. He had been scheduled to do work on the lighting in the Hagen kitchen. She did not answer the phone. Police would later determine that Anne-Elisabeth likely disappeared sometime between 9:15 a.m., when her call to her family member ended, and 9:48 a.m. when the electrician's unanswered red call came through. This narrow window, just 33 minutes, was when everything changed. Throughout the day, Tom tried calling his wife multiple times, as was their regular routine. When she didn't answer, he became worried about her health. At approximately 1:30 p.m., he returned home earlier than usual. What he found alarmed him immediately. Anne-Elisabeth was not there. According to Tom's account to police, there were signs that something was wrong. The couple's new puppy was locked in the bathroom. There was disarray in that same bathroom. And crucially, there was a letter. The ransom note was found on a chair in the hallway. Written in Norwegian, the document demanded 9 million euros, approximately $10.3 million at the time, to be paid in Monero, a privacy-focused cryptocurrency. The note contained serious threats about what would happen to Anne-Elisabeth if the ransom was not paid, or if police were contacted. It specifically warned that she would be killed if the case became public. The Hagen home showed no signs of forced entry. This was not particularly unusual. Anne-Elisabeth was known for rarely locking the doors when she was home alone. However, there were signs that a struggle had taken place, suggesting Anne-Elisabeth may have attempted to hide from intruders. Tom contacted police approximately 30 minutes after arriving home. He called them, despite the explicit warning in the ransom note against police involvement. The authorities met him at a gas station to maintain discretion. Norwegian police made an extraordinary decision. They would investigate the case in complete secrecy. For 10 weeks, while investigators worked intensively on the disappearance, the Norwegian public had no idea that Anne-Elisabeth Hagen was missing. This unprecedented decision was driven by the serious threats contained in the ransom note and genuine fear that publicity could endanger Anne-Elisabeth's life. During this covert phase, police conducted extensive forensic analysis of the Hagen home. They recovered several pieces of evidence from the scene: a plastic cable tie, a shoe print, bloodstains, and Anne-Elisabeth's mobile phone. The evidence of a struggle appeared to be concentrated in areas where Anne-Elisabeth might have tried to hide from whoever entered the home. The ransom note itself became a subject of intensive study. Forensic analysis revealed specific details about its creation. The letter had been created using WordPad for Windows with standard default settings. It was printed on Claes Olsen copy paper, manufactured in Portugal but widely sold in Norway, suggesting it had likely been purchased locally. The printing was done using a Hewlett-Packard inkjet printer with HP 302 or HP 304 cartridges. Perhaps most significantly, linguistic analysis of the note revealed something unexpected. While the text contained grammatical errors and appeared to have been written by someone with limited Norwegian language skills, forensic linguists determined this was likely deliberate deception. The mistakes appeared intentional, designed to make it seem like the author was not a native Norwegian speaker, when, in fact, experts believed they were. Police also examined surveillance footage from the area. Video from Tom Hagen's workplace at the Futurum building showed a person walking past at 7:36 a.m. on the morning of Anne-Elisabeth's disappearance. The individual walked past once, then turned around and walked back. 24 minutes later, footage showed a cyclist passing a person on the same road. Police sought to identify these individuals, considering the possibility they might have been conducting surveillance. Investigators discovered that the ransom note contained a link to a document on pasted.co, a website popular among hackers that allows people to share plain text anonymously. The password to access this document was Anne. Police believed this level of planning suggested the kidnapping had been arranged well in advance. The document on pasted.co contained 2 cryptocurrency addresses. According to the instructions, Tom Hagen was supposed to send Bitcoin to one address for coded communication, with 12 different payment amounts representing 12 different messages. The other address was designated for actual ransom payments. After 10 weeks of secret investigation without achieving a breakthrough, police made the difficult decision to go public. On January 9, 2019, Inspector Tommy Brosk held a press conference that shocked Norway. "Our main theory is that the victim was kidnapped by unidentified perpetrators at her home," Brosk told assembled reporters. He acknowledged the gravity of the situation. "We have no proof she is alive. But we haven't received any indication that she isn't alive either." Police explained they had kept the investigation low profile due to the serious threats against Anne-Elisabeth, but now needed the public's assistance. They did not reveal the exact ransom amount at the press conference, though Norwegian newspaper, Per VG, quickly reported it was €9 million. The demand for payment in Monero cryptocurrency was particularly notable. This privacy-focused digital currency, first released in 2014, is designed so that no outside observer can determine the source, amount, or destination of transactions. The public revelation brought an immediate response. Hundreds of tips poured in from concerned citizens. Police appealed for anyone who might have seen anything unusual in the Fjellhamar area on October 31 to come forward. Inspector Brosk emphasized that investigators were keeping an open mind and pursuing several possible theories regarding her disappearance. The ransom demand and threats were real, but much remained unclear. In the weeks and months following Anne-Elisabeth's disappearance, there was sporadic, anonymous communication between people connected to the pasted.co document and police. These communications took place through anonymous web browsers such as Tor and over email, all methods designed to prevent tracing. In February 2019, at another press conference, police announced there had been renewed contact with the alleged kidnappers. However, Inspector Broski noted a disturbing fact. "We still have the hope that Hagen is alive, but it is disturbing that no proof of life has been produced." Family lawyer Svein Holden stated that the family would follow police advice. "There will be no negotiations until the family receives a confirmation that Anne-Elisabeth Hagen is still alive," he said. "If the family receives such proof of life as the counterpart has outlined in their recent inquiry, the family will work to get Anne-Elisabeth home safe and sound as soon as possible." The alleged kidnappers had contacted the family through what Holden described as a different and better way than before. However, it remained one-way communication without the possibility for the family to respond immediately. Critically, despite these contacts, no proof of Anne-Elisabeth's life was ever provided. In July 2019, 9 months after Anne-Elisabeth's disappearance, those claiming to hold her made a final communication. They demanded a partial payment of the €9 million ransom. With assistance from police, Tom Hagen paid €1.35 million, equivalent to approximately $1.45 million. After this payment was made, the trail went completely cold. There was no further communication from the alleged kidnappers. No proof of life was provided. The money appeared to vanish into the untraceable cryptocurrency network. The silence that followed would last for years. By June 2019, less than 8 months after Anne-Elisabeth's disappearance, police publicly acknowledged they could not rule out that the alleged kidnapping might simply be a cover for her death. The absence of any signs that she was still alive, combined with the lack of genuine negotiation from the alleged kidnappers, raised serious doubts about whether a real kidnapping had taken place. Behind the scenes, investigators were pursuing new leads related to the cryptocurrency aspects of the case. In May 2021, Inspector Gjermund Hansen, who had taken over leadership of the investigation, revealed new details to Norwegian tabloid VG about the sophisticated cryptocurrency elements of the case. The people behind the plot had used a stolen identity to set up accounts on cryptocurrency exchanges, Binance, Huobi, and KuCoin. The stolen identity belonged to a person using the name Ole Henrik Golf. However, this person did not exist. The identity had been purchased on CardPass, a dark website that recycles identities. Remarkably, the Golf identity was actually a second iteration, reused after the original purchaser had sold it back. "We are wondering who in 2018 had both these skills and the willingness to do this to Anne-Elisabeth Hagen," Hansen told VG, emphasizing the technical sophistication required to execute such a scheme. On April 28, 2020, 18 months after Anne-Elisabeth's disappearance, Norwegian police made a dramatic and unexpected move. Tom Hagen was arrested on his way to work and charged with murder or complicity in murder of his wife. At a press conference, Ida Melbo Oistes, chief of Norway's Eastern Police District, explained the decision. The charge means that the case is now moving into a new phase. In this phase, it is important for me to emphasize that even though Tom Hagen has now been charged, the case is still under investigation, and there are several unanswered questions. Chief Police Investigator Tommy Broski provided more context. The case is characterized by a clearly planned deception. As other hypotheses have been weakened, suspicions against Tom Hagen have gradually been strengthened. The arrest sent shockwaves through Norway. Police now believed that Anne-Elisabeth had been killed and that the kidnapping had been staged to cover up a murder. They could not exclude, they said, that the alleged abduction was simply a cover for her death. Prosecutor Åse Kustad Eriksson announced that authorities would seek to have Hagen held for 4 weeks in pretrial custody. She indicated that more arrests were possible. Police declined to elaborate on a motive due to the ongoing investigation, though details soon emerged about aspects of the Hagen marriage that had drawn investigative attention. Reports indicated that police had investigated the couple's marriage contract from 1993. Some investigators believed the prenuptial agreement was so skewed in Tom's favor that if it had been challenged in court during a divorce, it might have been declared void. There were also reports that Anne-Elisabeth's internet history suggested she had researched divorce, though the specific timing and context of these searches were not made fully public. Tom Hagen vehemently denied any involvement in his wife's disappearance. His arrest sparked massive media coverage and public debate in Norway. Just 11 days after his arrest, on May 7 or 8, 2020, Tom Hagen was released from custody. The Court of Appeal reviewed the evidence and concluded differently from the lower district court. The court determined there were not sufficient grounds to keep him detained. The ruling did not mean the charges were dropped, only that Tom could not be held in jail while the investigation continued. This created an unusual legal situation where Tom remained formally suspected and charged with murder or complicity in murder, but was free to go about his daily life. Tom's defense attorney, Svein Holden, expressed confidence that police would eventually drop Hagen from the case. There isn't a shred of evidence that he had been involved in the kidnapping, quote, Holden would later state. The investigation continued with significant resources. Between 30 and 40 people worked on the case. Police received assistance from the National Crime Investigation Service, known as Kripos, and other special bodies. Over the course of the investigation, authorities surveyed 122 different locations in Norway and other countries, assessing and prioritizing these sites based on the probability that Anne-Elisabeth could be found there. In Norway, murder has no statute of limitations, meaning Tom Hagen could theoretically remain charged with murder for the rest of his life if police did not end the investigation. According to the Human Rights Convention, he would be considered innocent until proven guilty. The case involved more than just Tom Hagen. At various points, police identified 3 other suspects. A man in his 30s was charged with murder or aiding and abetting murder in connection with the case. However, like Tom Hagen, this individual denied any wrongdoing. In October 2020, police announced they were investigating a new angle in the case. A relative of Tom Hagen was accused of having tried to influence a key witness. The person's gender and specific relationship to Tom Hagen were not disclosed publicly. All of these additional suspects, like Tom Hagen, maintained their innocence throughout the investigation. Tom Hagen gave only one media interview about the case, speaking to Norwegian broadcasting. He rejected claims that marital problems had been his motive. Lisbeth and I have experienced that we have had a good marriage, he said. But we've had bumps along the way, like everyone else. There's nothing to hide. He described their marriage of nearly 50 years as something few people actually experience, noting that those who have understand that life goes up and down. He explained how he and Anne-Elisabeth had come together. It was fate that brought us together, he said, describing their marriage as destiny with reference to something personal they experienced together in their teenage years. In early police questioning in October 2018, he had described his wife as the kindest in the world and said they had a normal and good marriage. The case gained international attention and even inspired a Netflix dramatization called The Lørenskog Disappearance, which which premiered in September 2022. The series brought renewed global interest to a case that had largely been confined to Norwegian media. On October 18, 2024, nearly 6 years after Anne-Elisabeth's disappearance, Norwegian authorities announced they were dropping the case against Tom Hagen. Police spokeswoman Vibeke Schøyen told a news conference broadcast on Norwegian media, "There is no evidence that Tom Hagen was involved in his wife's disappearance." Tom's lawyer Svein Holden characterized the decision as a total acquittal of Tom Hagen. Hagen was naturally relieved, Holden said, though he made it clear the ordeal had been a huge burden for him and his family over the past 4 years. Holden was critical of the police investigation. He claimed that police had leaked information that made Hagen look bad in the media, calling that a severe violation of confidentiality rules. It was likely, he indicated, that Tom would seek compensation for his ordeal. However, police emphasized that the case itself remained open. "We believe that Anne-Elisabeth Hagen has been subjected to a serious crime, and the investigation in this case will continue," prosecutor Vibeke Schøyen stated. Police stressed they had conducted a broad investigation and would keep working to find answers. In October 2025, police dropped charges against the last remaining suspect, a 34-year-old man who had been charged with aiding and abetting murder. His defense attorney, Marius Dietrichson, told VG that the investigation had shown the suspicion against his client was incorrect. A higher prosecutor has now come to the conclusion that he is innocent, that he did not do what he was charged with, Dietrichson said. "We are satisfied with the conclusion, but believe that it should have come earlier." With all charges dropped, there were no defendants remaining in the investigation into Anne-Elisabeth Hagen's disappearance. As of January 2026, more than 7 years after Anne-Elisabeth Hagen vanished from her home, her fate remains unknown. Despite one of the most extensive and expensive investigations in Norwegian criminal history, police have never found her body. They have never definitively proven what happened to her. They have never successfully prosecuted anyone in connection with her disappearance. The case raised profound questions about crime and technology in modern Norway. The sophisticated use of cryptocurrency, dark web services, and anonymous communication methods demonstrated a level of technical knowledge that investigators found remarkable for 2008. The use of stolen and recycled identities to create cryptocurrency accounts showed how digital anonymity could be weaponized. For Norway, a country with one of the lowest homicide rates in Europe, and a population of only 5.3 million people, the case was unprecedented. Kidnappings for ransom are extremely rare in Norway. The wealth of the Hagen family, while substantial by Norwegian standards, also raised security concerns for other wealthy Norwegians who might be targets. The investigation generated thousands of tips from the public and resulted in international cooperation with law enforcement agencies across Europe. Police released security videos of men walking near Tom Hagen's workplace after Anne-Elisabeth's disappearance. Officers and police dogs scoured the grounds around the couple's home. Divers searched a nearby pond. Yet none of these efforts produced the breakthrough investigators needed. The question of whether Anne-Elisabeth was kidnapped by criminals seeking ransom, or whether something else occurred, remains officially unresolved. The partial ransom payment of €1.35 million disappeared into the untraceable cryptocurrency network, never to be recovered. No one has ever come forward with credible information about Anne-Elisabeth's whereabouts. For the 3 adult children of Anne-Elisabeth and Tom Hagen, the uncertainty continues. They have spent more than 7 years not knowing what happened to their mother, unable to properly grieve, unable to find closure. They have had to process the possibility that their mother might be dead while watching their father become the prime suspect in her disappearance, and then seeing those charges eventually dropped. Anne-Elisabeth Hagen, the warm, happy woman who was liked by everyone, the grandmother devoted to her family, the woman who had been married to her childhood sweetheart for nearly 50 years. She vanished on a Halloween morning in 2018. Despite every effort of Norwegian law enforcement, despite international cooperation, despite thousands of tips and years of investigation, no one knows where she is or what happened to her. The case remains open, Police continue to appeal for information. Somewhere, there may be answers. But for now, the disappearance of Anne-Elisabeth Hagen remains one of Norway's most baffling and heartbreaking mysteries.